So today we're going to be talking about comic books, and we're going to be focusing specifically on a trend in comics during the Silver Age of comics. And if you're saying, what's the Silver Age of comics? Well, comics had a big boom in like the 1930s and 40s with the debut of Superman, Batman, you had Captain America, Wonder Woman, and you had a lot of horror comics, and they were really selling, a lot of comic books. That was the golden age of comics from the 30s to the 40s. And then the Silver Age started, let's say around 1956 and ran all the way through the 60s and sort of ended at 1970. And during the Silver Age of comics, you saw Marvel Comics sort of rise to prominence. And Marvel Comics was doing these really amazing things with their comic. They were weaving sort of this whole connected world where all of their properties would interact with each other, and there was a lot of continuity and sort of a whole universe that they built. And the stories they were telling were very complex. They were not as simple as some of the stories from the Golden Age. They were a little bit more intellectual. They aimed more at the teenage sect rather than young children. They were telling mature stories, sometimes stories that focused on, relationships between superheroes or the problems that superheroes would go through. So really more complex, daring, adult type of storytelling from Marvel Comics in the Silver Age. And on the other side of the pond, DC during the Silver Age was making all of their characters get really fat. Alright, so up first from 1958, we have Superman's girlfriend, Lois Lane, number 5. And we'll see, it says, what I'd give to be slim Lois Lane like I used to be, like the reflection in the trick mirror. If Superman ever saw me now, I'd die. And then right around the corner, look who's there. Superman, he's about to see her. And then it says, featuring Lois Lane as the fattest girl in Metropolis. And what's said about that is, if you look at Lois Lane, she basically looks, now she has the proportions of, your average American woman. So to say that, this is the fattest girl in all of Metropolis, then you must be, Metropolis must be a fairly thin town. Yes, she is overweight, but she's not like circus freak fat. She's like regular portly woman. So it's a little depressing that, she would be this distraught over gaining some weight. But this is the first one we're looking at where we have a main character of a book getting fat. And up next from 1960, also from the Superman universe, we have Superman's pal, Jimmy Olsen, number 49. And you see he's on a scale here. He's gotten very fat. And Superman says, "Happy, Jimmy? The Maharaja promised to give you your weight in jewels. And you're weighing in at 300 pounds. And Jimmy Olsen is saying, But I don't want to be fat. Not for all the jewels in the world. Can't you help me reduce, Superman? Please?" Featuring the fat boy of Metropolis. So there's another, superhero, not a superhero, but a supporting character for a superhero who's getting fat. And this will not be the first time, it will not be the last time we see Jimmy Olsen as a fatty, because right now, in 1962, issue number 59, a couple years later, we see he's fat again and also sort of a freak. He's got like elf ears here. And it says, Superman, help me. These spacemen were jealous of my good looks. And that's kind of an in-joke because Jimmy Olsen's like a ginger nerd. So they turned me into a human balloon, and they given me ears like a mule, and his little watch here is going zee, zee, zee. I think that's how he calls Superman. It's like he's his sidekick basically. So he's got a little watch that calls Superman. Superman saying, "Poor Jimmy. These characters have," he's thinking this, "these characters have altered his body the way red kryptonite alters mine. But there's no hope that he'll ever change back to his normal form again." And that's not true, because in the next issue, he's probably back to his old self. You know, it's a lie. They're always lying to you on the cover of these comics. And then up next, in 1967, Jimmy Olsen 105, another Jimmy Olsen with we see the return of the fat Jimmy Olsen from when they were weighing him with the Maharaja. There's Jimmy Olsen saying, "Superman, help me fight off these weirdy doubles of myself." Isn't that, most people would say weirdo, but he says weirdy. "Help me fight off these weirdy doubles of myself. They all want to kill me." "How do I know you're the real Jimmy? Maybe you're as phony as this elastic Olsen." And you got the fat Jimmy Olsen along with all the other weirdy Jimmy Olsens charging it at this Jimmy Olsen. So it's sort of like a return. But that's, let me tell you something. If you thought Jimmy Olsen turned fat a lot, we're about to see the guy who turns fattest the most often fat. 1969, Superman number 221. We have the True Ton Superman, and Superman just busting through the telephone booth where he usually goes to change from Clark Kent into Superman. Bam, he's busting free of it. "Great Krypton, I came into this booth to change identities, and I've become a super fatso." So not very, fat kids buy comic books, and you got to wonder what effect that this had. Maybe it was an escape for them. They wanted to buy comics to read and forget about sort of all the bullying that happened and all of their weight problems, and they could just take solace in the fact that, for 20 minutes they could live in a fantasy land with Superman, and here these comics are just rubbing their face and, "Hey, fatty," I'm making fun of fat people. So this, I don't think this would fly today in today's PC culture. And up next we have Superboy Volume 1. This is from 1952. It's Superboy number 24. And this is also another case of Superman turning fat, because the original Superboy was really just Superman when he was younger. That might be different now, but back with the original Superboy, he wasn't a different entity. He was Superman growing up in Smallville. So this is Superman also getting fat. You see his costume's ripping. Don't exert yourself too much, Superboy. Remember, you're a little overweight. I think that's Lana Lang, maybe. And Superboy's a fatty. He got fat. Why? Who knows? So, if you thought we were done with fat Superboy and Superman, wrong. Superboy's fat again. 1962. Adventure Comics. Featuring the fat Superboy. How many times can this one guy get fat, right? Superman, Superboy, just always getting fat. Lana Lang's in the telephone booth this time, and she's saying, "Boo-hoo, Superboy, I'm so embarrassed getting stuck in this phone booth because I've suddenly become stout." And stout, I looked this up, means it's like short and fat. "Promise you won't look at me? You don't know what it is to be fat." So she's feeling all upset, just like Lois Lane previously was, because she's fat. She doesn't want Superboy to see her. Little does she know. "Don't worry, Lana. I'll turn you over to the police emergency squad so they can pry you loose," because she got her butt stuck in the door. "I don't dare let Lana know that I've also become fat." What a coinky-dink that is. Up next, different superhero turning fat. Nope. Superboy again. 1965, Adventure Comics, number 330. Superboy is fat again. There's been like a mix-up with everybody's powers, and Superboy apparently got Bouncing Boy's powers. it just made him a big fat guy. So fat again. Up next, we have from 1962. Hey, Superman's fat again. World's Finest Comics. Number 131. This was a comic where you usually see Batman and Superman team up. And this is a very rare occurrence of Batman getting fat as well. I guess just because he's hanging out with Superman and Superman turns fat so often. It's like if you hang out with Superman enough, the odds are in your favor that you're going to turn into a fat guy. Because normally Batman in his comics, he wasn't turning fat. That was like a Superman thing. So this guy shot him with a ray that turned them into sort of like runaway blimps, big fat blimp men. So they're, you know. So are we finally done with Superman as being fat? No, we're not. Action Comics. This is from 1977. Action Comics. This is actually from the Bronze Age of comics, but we're going to include it because look at the big super lard man, Superman, big fat obese Superman, and these guys down here, these guys in green armors are saying, "Keep firing to Superman, no longer poses a threat to us. Then we will become the landlords of the earth." So somehow they have these sort of weird guns, and instead of killing a guy when you shoot him, it makes him into some giant big fat guy. So I guess they're just going to keep firing and firing until Superman's, you know, huge and like the size of the whole wide world, and then they're going to take over. But, you know, I feel like, you know, even making Superman fat, he can still destroy you, you know, but whatever. I doubt it worked. And then this next one's kind of a cheat. This is from 1975, also the Bronze Age. And it's not really that Superman's fat on the cover, but it gives you an idea of maybe why he's always getting fat. Because if you see here, he's just eating 1 million hamburgers at McDonald's. So he's saying, "More burgers! Keep them coming! Or I'll starve to death!" And then he's just like super eating all of these burgers. So maybe that's why he's always getting fat, because he just keeps eating at McDonald's. He didn't see that movie Super Size Me, where a guy, you know, eats a million Big Macs and turns into a big fat guy. But up next, this one is this is a hero who got really, really fat. From 1960, The Flash. He gets really huge, like bigger and fatter than Superboy did, bigger and fatter than Jimmy Olsen and Lois Lane. You know, there's this guy over here, he's got some sort of ray that's turning him fat, and he's saying, "What's happening to me? I'm becoming so fat. I can hardly run." So the Flash, he's not even being able to use his super speed powers anymore because he's a giant, obese, fat turd. So, you know, the day Flash weighed 1,000 pounds. So, you know, Jimmy Olsen was 300 pounds. The Flash is 1,000. Imagine if he was on that scale, how much money he would get from the Maharaja. And from 1966, The Brave and the Bold, number 68. Batman and and the Element Man. You hear the villains here, and they're saying, "Ho ha he ho ho." They're laughing and saying, "Nice work, Bat Hulk. Bye bye, Element Man." So apparently they found a way to turn Batman into some sort of like hulking creature version of himself, and he's definitely bigger in proportion. He still seems to have like abs, but he's a little flabby. I chose to include it just because, like I said, it's very rare to see Batman, you know, turn fat. I wouldn't be surprised if he was hanging out with Superman earlier in the day, and then like that's maybe why this happened to him. Like I said, you know, hang out with Superman enough, you're gonna get fat. That's the way comics work. Up next, from 1964, 80-page giant. This was actually a comic, 80-page giant, and each one, this is issue number 4, each one would feature like a a collection of tales of a certain superhero, and this one is the Flash, and it's really just retelling the story of when he weighed 1,000 pounds. But I'm including it because there he is on the cover, super fat, and I'm trying to make a really comprehensive list of every fat comic of DC, where the characters get fat. So I'm including this. It's a throwback to when he got obese and weighed 1,000 pounds. And up next, this is the one what I think most of you were waiting for, from 1961. It's not really my thing, but I know a lot of people like larger women. They're very attracted to women of large size. It's sort of I guess you could say maybe a fetish for some people. They like big women, and I don't dislike big women, but it's not like something that I'm always looking for and I need to have. But for those of you who do have that particular fetish, this one I saved for last for you because you know, I knew you would get very excited to see Wonder Woman getting very, very big, and you see, you know, just her sort of buxom figure and her sort of very rotund rump there in the Stars and Stripes, and I know that's going to be very appealing to a lot of you. Aquaman sees, this is Justice League of America number 7, and Aquaman stumbles upon his teammates. The Justice League members don't realize it, but they've really changed into the very distortions they see themselves in the mirror. So you look in the mirror, you see yourself with a long neck, you get a long neck. You see yourself very short, you get really short. You see yourself with like a warped big brain, head, cranium, you get that. And if you're Wonder Woman and you see yourself as a very round, large goddess, then you become very large and round. I don't know if you can hear that. There's an ambulance in the background. I bet they wish that they could use to help all these superheroes. I shouldn't joke about it. It could be a real emergency, so I don't want to make light of it and say, oh, too bad the superheroes can't help. But, you know, if they could, I know they would, especially fat Wonder Woman. So that's the last one. I think, I'm pretty sure that this is all the fat comics that DC put out. If you know of any that I'm missing of, you know, comic covers where the heroes get super fat, I'm looking for the covers specifically where they get fat. Let me know in the comic section. I said the comic section. I mean the comments section. And let me know which was your favorite fat cover. So there we have the history of DC Comics in the 60s, in the Silver Age, and about how they made all their characters get fat. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and sign up for alerts, like, and subscribe.
I ride my bicycle, I like to play with toys. I ride my bicycle, I like to play with toys. I ride my bicycle, I like to play with toys. I ride my bicycle, I like to play with toys.